Let me first give out a shout out to the European version of Twilio's developer conference. It's happening on November 19th in London. So if you're in the UK and you want to hear what's new with Twilio, make sure to scan the QR code to save your spot. I will be there. I'll be happy to talk to you about anything Twilio. And this is also the place where we announced Conversation Relay last year as a public beta. And by now it's GA. And this is also what I will talk about in my presentation. Oh, 1 second. Next slide. Yep. And exactly, I will show you minimal infrastructure that you can that you need to build a phone agent. And a phone agent is basically an AI you can call on your phone, so either your mobile phone or even your landline. So you call or dial the number, and then you can ask the agent, what's the weather in Munich? Do I need a raincoat when I go out? But you can also give it any instruction, and then with, for example, MCP servers, it can perform them. And really, the minimal infrastructure, I would say, is the bare minimum you need. So you need a Twilio account, because that's your central dashboard for all things communication, where you can purchase the phone number, an OpenAI account, or any other LLM provider if you prefer that, and less than 100 lines of TypeScript. And we will actually build that together, or you will see me building it in a second. But first, I want to show you this clip from the OpenAI Dev Day that happened last week.
Personally, I think that voice is going to become one of the primary ways that people interact with AI. And this is a big leap towards that reality.
So I hope you were able to hear the audio. Otherwise, I messed something up earlier.
We did,
Awesome. So my question now, this is interactive, Chris, then to you is, why do you think is the input-output of voice better than the written word, or how much better is it? Do you have an estimate?
We talked about that before, and we were kind of critical about it, because there is the thing like speaking to the machine is much, much faster, and turning it into something useful. But having to listen and parse it in your head as a human is actually, it takes longer than actually reading, because you can't, it's synchronous and not asynchronous. Reading is asynchronous because you can skim a text and only read every 5th word or so. Audio is always like synchronous with that. But yeah, I understand the feature of it, how faster it is, because people are bad at typing. And I think if it comes to like input, I would say like that speech to text is probably like 60% faster.
I went for a lower estimate, by the way. I actually thought like 30%. I thought that as like an average, you know, like you're saying, Chris, you save some time on one end, but you lose some time on the other. So I actually think the savings might not be that big. I'm going to say like 30%, 25, something like that.
Okay, nice. So actually, I agree with what both of you say. So I have these numbers from the blog post that is linked below from Julian. Obviously, it's very hard to average this across all humans. It depends on what kind of text is it, in which mood are you. But the numbers that he mentioned in his post is like 250 words per minute reading, and writing 60 words per minute. And then when we talk about like the spoken word, hearing is faster. I agree, Chris. It's like, how much can you actually process? But hearing, I think, generally speaking, people agree that you can hear faster. And then the big difference is the speaking. And I agree with the understanding part, but again, this is very depending on the domain. And if you're like writing, you need something in your hands, or you need to have your hands on the keyboard, on your smartphone. If you're reading, you have to look at something. And the big advantage of like the spoken word is my hands are free and I can look anywhere. I can look like in the eyes of another person when I talk to them. I can like maybe drive the car. So it's just, I think if it's a low cognitive task, I think the benefits are clearly outweighing for like hearing or for the spoken word. And I think that is where we see AI. Or the use cases for speaking with AI. It's not going anywhere with certain really complex tasks. There, I think there's a good reason why humans invented the written word, but other use cases, that's really interesting to see how voice could be used. And I think this is also a nice like trivia fact about Twilio, because most developers out there probably know us for our messaging API to send text messages, WhatsApp, and so on. But actually, the first channel that Twilio released for developers was voice. And only 2 years later, messaging was added. And voice is still used by a lot of big companies when they basically run their contact centers or so. But for developers, like voice has been not so interesting in the years, like let's say in the last 7-8 years. But this changed with ChatGPT when this came out, and like 11 Labs and DeepGram and all these voice models, that developers were like more curious what they can build with voice and how they can use like phone calls to connect it to AI. And for that, many of them chose next slide, this architect. It's not really an architecture, but it's like a list of things they had to consider. And this basically turned out really the hard way, because they had to connect a caller to their business application, and then they had to deal with automatic speech recognition, interruption detection, because obviously you want to be able to interrupt the AI if it misunderstands something, or if it just gives you a really long answer, but it actually already answered your question with the first few words. So this is really crucial for a good voice agent. You need to have a text-to-speech, and that also comes with some latency together with the speech recognition, because most likely you're not building this on your own. You're using like maybe a Google service, AWS service, 11 Labs, DeepGram, one of these kind, and then you have the latency from the phone call to your data center, to the speech recognition, latency back, then you send it to an LLM, latency back, and then maybe text-to-speech. And this is really hard to do the right way. And then if you manage to do all of that, then you can actually start like working on the business logic and actually making the app or the voice agent useful for your customers and clients. And that's why we at Twilio thought, like, why don't we abstract this away from the developers? So the smarter way that we propose with Conversation Relay is that the callers basically, the caller is connected to the business application, but Twilio already is in the middle anyway, because we are basically the communication channel, and we could take care of speech recognition, interruption detection, text-to-speech, and then the application developers only need to worry about their application logic and which LLM they want to use. So they can use a default one, they can use fine training, or they can use fine training to improve the quality of the LLM, but this is all related to their business domain, and they don't have to worry if they should use this provider for speech recognition or the other one and how to integrate it. And thing worth calling out is that also we at Twilio, we don't have our own speech model, but we work together with partners such as 11 Labs, DeepGram, AWS, and you can just set it in the configuration. We take care of the connection to these data centers. We make sure the latency is as low as possible. So this is almost instant for your web application. And the way this would look in maybe a more hands-on chart is the caller would connect to Twilio. So they dial a number that you purchased in the Twilio console. Twilio Conversation Relay transcribes everything as text, and we send this text to your application as a WebSocket. You can handle the text whatever you want. You can, again, do some checking. You can have some guardrails. You can connect to an LLM of your choice. And then you reply back with text via the same WebSocket. And Twilio kind of then makes sure the text-to-speech is happening with a really low latency. And with that, I would start with the demo. I quickly want to also highlight this graphic here maybe. This shows the same thing as you've seen in the previous slide, but here you see when a call comes into Twilio, Twilio translates this into something we web developers understand, an HTTP request with some header data or some form data that defines who's the caller, who's the callee, and then your application can reply with some instructions. In this case, it's called TWIML, Twilio XML. So you see the XML structured with some configuration, and then Twilio translates these instructions into spoken words that your caller will hear again. With that, I quickly need to switch my screen sharing so you see my VS Code. 1 second.
I love the says ahoy thing, because that was how Alexander Graham Bell said, like, we should actually answer a telephone call when he invented it. Ahoy was supposed to be the first thing you say in every telephone call. We never did that. We really let him down.
Yeah. I think there's this urban legend that in the very first call that he made, he replied with ahoy, or he answered with ahoy.
Yeah.
So he started, but then we let him down. Let me find.
Which is odd because ahoy is such a natural thing to say.
Yeah. Entire screen 1. So nice. You should see my VS Code now, hopefully.
We do, yeah.
Perfect. So let's start writing a new application or WebSocket server. I used Dino for it because I really like the simplicity of it. Have you used Dino before?
Yeah, we had Joe Franchetti on the show, who's actually from Dino, and she talked about their stuff as well.
Oh, nice. So I go into this directory, I open the main TS file, and there's already some code in here. I don't want to use that default code, but I start with my new web server. So I start with Dino serve, define an async function that gets a request, and then let's see how Copilot supports me or sabotages me today. So the first thing is I parse the upgrade header. And if there is an upgrade header that says the request wants to upgrade to WebSocket server, then let's actually do that. And now is the first, no, not if it's unequal, but if it's equal to WebSocket, then I do the upgrade. And for now, I just return the response back. And I don't do anything with the WebSocket server for now. And if it's not an upgrade request, it probably means it's a regular HTTP request, and I need to return the instructions that we want to use conversation relay. So for that, I parse the host name from the request, and then I return a response that is not hello from hostname, but I generate some TWIML instructions. And I pass in the host name, and because, as I mentioned before, TWIML is an XML, I have to set a content type in the header and close the Dino serve function up here, and then I define this generate TWIML function. It passes in the host name, and then I have a WebSocket server URL that basically points. It's really trying to sabotage me here today. It's basically a WebSocket server that points to the same host name, that lives in the same host name. Let's call this. And then I return the TWIML. So I have this XML header, I have a response, and then I have a connect because I want to connect to my conversation relay. Let's actually call this conversation relay tag here. And then I define the URL of the WebSocket server. I define the language I want to use. So this is the configuration with my text-to-speech and speech-to-text providers. So the language, let's set it to English. I have a text-to-speech provider that is 11 labs. And the voice is not Josh, but that actually has an ID that I need to look up in my cheat sheet. 1 second. Oh, here I have it.
Trying to see if you're sending Morse code with the bumping on the keyboard, but it's not.
Let's actually copy it from here. And last but not least, I have a welcome greeting. So this is the initial greeting that someone will hear when the phone is being picked up. So hello from, let's say, hi from WeAreDevelopers Live. And then I close the conversation relay tag, I close the connect tag and the response tag. So this looks all good. So if I scroll up, let's actually define what happens when a message comes in via this WebSocket server or on the WebSocket channel. So I say socket on message, and then I parse the message payload. So that's basically there's a string in the data property that I parse to be able to understand what a JSON says. And then if it's of type prompt, which means the user says something, I return something on the web. Or let's actually log it to the console first, receive prompt, and then I say socket. I send a reply back that I need to stringify. The type is text. The token is basically what should be set. So let's say hi from Dino for now. And then I need to set this flag last equals to true. That means the AI starts to speak immediately. If I could set this to false, especially if I'm streaming a reply and I don't have the full string available yet, or maybe it stopped in the middle of a word, then I would not set last to true. And only when I then send a message with last equals true, then it would speak everything that is basically in the pipeline. So then this is everything that I do when the message is of type prompt. If it's any other type, I just log unknown message type to the console, and then I close everything, close all brackets here. That looks hopefully good. And I can test my Dino server. So I use Dino allow net because I want to allow network connection for this application and access to the environment variables. I don't need this right now, but I need this in a second. So I already have that in there. So I start a server on port 8000 and I expose this port 8000 with ncroc to my ncroc URL. And then I can test it here. If I go to moba.ncroc.io, this is how I get my trimmer reply back. So with that, let's actually go to the Twilio console and let's purchase a new number and connect this number to my web server that I have here. Obviously, it logged me out.
What's your password?
Yeah, test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I just go through all numbers.
Great success.
So when you log into a Twilio console, you can purchase numbers. You can do, as I said before, do text messaging with the numbers, voice calls. And for now, I go to manage numbers, buy a number. I actually want to buy one from Germany. One that does voice only is fine. And I'm based in Munich, so I search for the area code 89 in Munich, and I buy the number. I'm a business, so you need to do some registration before you are able to buy a number. This is not up to Twilio. This is just like local regulations. So if you want to purchase a phone number in the UK, for example, this would look different for you. But that's all I had to do to basically buy this phone number. I can click on configure, and then I see this voice configuration. And whenever a call comes in, it should call this webhook. I set it to get now, but I guess post would also work because I didn't specify in my code which HTTP verb I want to reply to specifically. And now I can call this number. Let's make my life a bit easier, and let's so that I don't have to copy the number, but I can just scan this QR code, and then I will call it and go on speaker.
Developers Live.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hi from Denno.
So you can see the transcription is instantly coming in here.
Hi from Denno.
But I always get the same reply, but this is because I always send the same reply back here.
Hi from Denno.
But if I say a lot of words really fast and I don't make a break and I wait, and I keep on talking and then I pause, let's see how long it takes for the prompt to come in.
Hi from Denno.
So you see, this works really fast. There's almost no latency. This is really almost instant. And if you look really closely, you see maybe it gets a few words wrong, but that's not a problem because if we now send this to a LLM, the LLM can still make sense of it. I mean, you should know probably you shouldn't know how I type to ChatGPT. The spaces, they're in random places. They're not in between, they're in a word, but they're not separating words. They're just like somewhere sprinkled across, and the LLM usually can still make sense of that. So let me actually import the OpenAI package here from, since we live in the Dino world, I will use JSR and not NPM. OpenAI, and then I initialize the client. It passes the environment variable from, passes the key from the environment variables, and then I write a function that is called AI response that gets a prompt, that is a string. I always hit the wrong key here today, and a callback function that then gets a chunk of the reply back. Why don't I return the full reply as the return parameter of this function? Well, because I want to stream the reply back. Because if I waited for the full reply from OpenAI, this would just add some additional latency that I don't want to have for a phone or voice agent, because it should be as instant as possible. So I rather say stream the responses back, and when I get the first part, I can already basically read out that reply to the user, and I don't have to wait for the full time, but it actually just is faster. So for that, I use the responses API. I use the GPT-5 Nano model that I also announced last week. I set this streaming parameter to true. One thing that I noticed is that I can also have the add some tools. And I use the web search tool, so I can basically ask questions that about like sport results or something that is very recent and before the cutoff date. And I can set the reasoning effort to low. This also helps to get a faster reply. And for the input, I only have one input parameter for now, or one element in this array, and that's the prompt of the user. And I noticed I have a typo here.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's actually weird that it repeats it, right? Like if you have a typo and it keeps repeating the typo, then that's odd.
Yeah, but at least the AI didn't mess up my code this time, so that's something. And then for every, let's call it event of stream, I check the event type. And if it's, let's remove that. If it's of type text delta, I basically just call this parameter, call the callback function with this delta text or an empty string. And in here, I could also console log it, so we see it in the console for now. So let's see if this mostly looks good. So I could now go down here, and instead of logging the prompt to the console and sending hi from Dino back, let's actually call the AI response function with the voice prompt. And whenever I get a text chunk back, I send this text chunk back via the WebSocket channel. It's again of type text. The token is chunk. And then I say last should be true when, not when this ends with when there's a space included. So this is, again, Copilot trying to sabotage me today. But I should say if it ends with a period or exclamation mark or question mark, then last should be set to true. So it always like speaks a full sentence and it doesn't stop in the middle of it. And now I need to make sure to close all the parentheses in the right order. Let's see if that checks out. Let's remove that first. Okay, it doesn't like the format, but it looks good to me. Oh, I think because, did I close this one up here properly? No, that looks good.
It's on the Dino serve one, the last one isn't closed, it seems.
But it was closed before, so I think only the code that I added new is something that doesn't work. Because it worked before when I ran this code.
There's another else there at the end. Is that it?
I think now it looks good. Yeah, and now I just add this else back that I had. It was just a console log with unknown message type. Okay, so one thing that, so now it would stream the reply back, but one thing that it wouldn't do is that if I asked it, hey, tell me a joke, because Chris, I know you like to do dad jokes in the show. I haven't heard one so far, so I'm still waiting for it, but we can ask the AI for one. But if I really like it and I say, tell me 5 more, right now it would say 5 more of what? I have no idea what you mean. Because we don't preserve the history. But that's actually an easy fix, because OpenAI by default has the store flag on, so it saves it. We just need to tell it to which history we refer. So there is this last ID that is currently undefined, and then I could add a parameter in this call that says previous response ID, and that's the last ID. So now I only need to make sure, how do I manage this last ID across all WebSocket connections, because there could be multiple in parallel. So let's actually add a map up here. Let's go with a very simple approach, last message ID map, and it maps a WebSocket to a string. And here I basically fetch the last ID from the WebSocket, and I also pass in the WebSocket in this function call. WebSocket, spelled like that. And if I get a response back, so the final response, not a delta response, it's of type response completed. And then I can set this last message ID. I can map the WebSocket ID to the ID of the final response. I actually don't need to log this to the console. That keeps everything a bit cleaner. And then I can check up here. Let's create an input array that is empty. And if no last ID exists, which means it's the first time actually the AI talks to us, or we are talking to the AI, let's add a system prompt. You're a helpful phone assistant, keep your responses concise, and don't use bullet points. And then I push the user prompt in this array as well. And in here, I just refer to this input array that I mentioned up there. And this looks all good. The only thing that's missing is I need to add the socket server, or the socket is to this function call. And then I can try to call this number again. Let's go to my phone app, go on speaker.
Hi from WeAreDevelopers Live.
Hey, can you tell me a dad joke for software developers?
Why do programmers prefer dark mode? Because light attracts bugs.
Okay, that's a good one. I heard that one before. Do you have 5 more? Maybe there's a new one there.
Here are 5 more. Why do programmers hate nature? It has too many bugs. How many programmers does it take to change a light bulb? None. That's a hardware problem.
Okay, thank you. I got it. So you saw, I got some good jokes. I'm not a fan of dad jokes, to be honest. So Chris, I would leave it to you to rate them if they were any good.
That's not bad. I'm really impressed with that. This is really good, especially the interrupt stuff that it caught that on as well. So yeah, it's wow, good stuff.
Nice. And that was basically my demo. I want to go back here to this to the Twilio dashboard. I still have the QR code here that I think you should see. I will keep this phone number running for, let's say, a few more months, at least until the end of the year. So if you're watching the recording, give this number a call. You should be able to talk to the AI. Maybe you get better jokes back than me. And you basically saw how I was able to build a phone agent, like an AI agent, with less than 100 lines of code. Let's go back to see how many it was, like 91 lines of code, a Twilio account, and an OpenAI account. And I didn't have to worry about text-to-speech, speech-to-text, interrupt detection. Everything basically came in for free, and I could focus on the business logic, which in my case was just like forwarding the prompt to the LLM. And if this inspired you and you're curious to build something similar, make sure to sign up for a Twilio account. This QR code will point you to the sign-up form, and you can use this promo code WeAreDevsLive to get $30 in free credits to get started building. If you have questions, you can find me on LinkedIn, on X, on Blue Sky, on our socials, and yeah, let me know what you're building, and I'm looking forward to seeing how I could support you with that.